We might as well start at the beginning. The Coventry Canal currently starts at Hawkesbury Junction here, just north of Coventry. However, it did continue much further into Coventry by over a mile to Longford, and this was mainly due to the fact that they couldn't agree on where the junction should be. The Coventry Canal wanted to cover more distance for its cargo to get more tolls from the local collieries, so they made them move all the way to Longford, and then they'd have to come a mile back along the same route, the two canals being side by side for that distance. This video, however, isn't about that, and that'll be maybe picked up in a later date, but we're actually here to cover the straightening of the Oxford Canal in the late 1820s. The railways were already making inroads into the traffic on the canals, and to try and remain competitive, the Oxford Canal wanted to try and speed things up. The original route planned by Brindley followed the contour. It stuck very firmly to that contour and only deviated where it had to. This meant that there was many miles that it went out of its way. Initially that was a good thing because it passed more towns and villages on its way, but eventually this caused a delay in any through traffic that wanted to go to London, either via the Oxford route or later via the Grand Junction Canal. But this time, in the 1820s, the Grand Junction Canal was already taking a lot of traffic through to London, and so to try and maximise this, the Oxford Canal straightened especially the northern stretches from Coventry through to Braunston. We're using some 1870s maps which still show the old loops in water in many places, but you can also see some of the earthworks of the filled in sections. A yellow line has been placed where the canal is no longer in water. The first place we come to where the canal leaves its current route is near the Wicken Colliery Arm, which is now used by the Coventry Cruising Club. Leaving just after the colliery arm, it used to follow the 305-foot contour. Of course, this was before the M6 was built or the housing estates. The line of trees show where the canal used to go, and in fact we'll have a closer look at that in a moment. It's not clear if I'm walking on the towpath or in the canal itself here. There's very little to denote which part of the canal, since the height changes seem to have all but disappeared. This whole area has been re-landscaped, although the canal route hasn't been built on in all of the places. However, there are sections that have been completely obliterated, like for example the corner of the cemetery. The M6 wasn't built then either, and so of course that's gone completely over any trace of the canal. However, once you get through the other side of that, there is a small dip in the bank which could have been its original route, even though some of the locals have made a motorbike track out of some of the soil. The interesting thing is this loop used to be all the way through, as you can see on the map, and that meant that it needed towpath bridges at both ends. The towpath bridge at the eastern end was of the classic and admired cast iron type. That must have been broken and gone for scrap. Here in the 60s, this photograph shows them removing the bridge and filling in the canal. Standing in the middle of the strait, you can easily see both ends, so it's obvious why this was an easy candidate for straightening. Moving along the canal to the next Brindley has done a rather good job of trying to keep it straight. However, again, where there was a small valley with a stream in it, he's decided to go further up the valley before cutting across. Here we had to move a road that used to go to the other side of where the canal is now. Luckily it was only a small road and didn't go any further. I should also point out these maps. These were generated for the Oxford Canal Company by William Cubitt, who, along with Mark Brunel, were the engineers in charge of the straightening. On the ground, the trees get in the way a bit, although you can see some sort of linear feature. It's only really once you get into the air that it becomes much clearer. Starting from the M69 bridge, you can see the new embankment that was built. If you follow the line of trees to the left and then up and around like a U shape, you can actually see the line of the canal quite clearly, and I think there's actually some water in between some of them trees. Once back on the ground, this is where the new section joins the original line of the canal again. Moving through the village, we get to our next loop. This loop again goes up a valley to cross at a narrower point. The railway, when it was built, also was going to get in the way, but that came after the straightening of the loops. Now a golf course with a unique water feature. You can see the route of the canal, which is also still in water in places, heading towards the railway embankment. It then follows the railway path for a little while before heading back and crossing the canal somewhere just this side of the bridge down below. There's very little sign of the canal on the south bank, as the golf course seems to have obliterated most of it. However, there is a line of trees that delineate the edge of the canal, and you can just see a darkening in the grass where the canal used to run. The route of the canal crosses the new line at an angle and heads off to Hopsford, where it crosses a brook. You can clearly see the line of trees, the sharp corner, and it crosses the brook, which is also lined with trees, and then comes all the way around and past this farm. It then continues to follow the contour across this farm track, heading in the direction of Withymoor. And then heads across to the right of the lake. There's a section that's been removed of the embankment. Just there you can see there's a gap. This is some footage I filmed earlier in the year. Again, it goes straight across the valley and then takes a sharp right hand turn to come back along the contour. It crosses the canal at a reverse angle to the direction at the Narrows and continues to follow the hill around to Nettle Hill Farm. I had a look at the canal near Nettle Hill. It's not very obvious where the channel is and where the towpath was, but there's definitely an incline on the downhill side, which must have been the bank. I think some of the canal must have been refilled to reclaim the land. According to the old maps, there was a small section the other side of the farm road, but that's now been completely obliterated by the farming. But it used to cross the field and head over where the M6 is now built. eventually rejoining towards the end of the Nettle Hill Strait. Near the end of the Nettle Hill Strait, there's a small loop you can just see on the LiDAR. Just comes in where the start of the boat moorings are. Moving on to the next section, we come to a small loop that's been taken off. There's nothing left there to see. You can't see any of the remains. It's all just been removed completely and flattened for the fields. And once it crosses over at right angles to the original track, it goes through the middle of that field in the centre of the screen, takes a sharp right-hand corner and follows this hedge. It goes where these large lumps of trees are. On the other side are some fishing ponds, but that's not where the canal used to be. The canal actually used to be what is now the driveway for the fishing lakes. It's not long though before we reach the end of, sometimes it's known as the Brinklow Arm, mainly because Brinklow Boats is down there, but really it's Stretton Wharf, and that's why this bit of canal exists. It exists to service the village of Stretton, which wasn't far away, and there is also an overflow weir that goes into one of the brooks. This small section also then crosses the canal again at right angles to go around a small hill. As we follow it past Stretton Wharf where the industrial buildings are, it follows the contour around. It goes underneath the railway at this point. It's a very low bridge, so you have to be careful as you go under it. It goes right across just in front of the stop lock at Stretton, where some of the buildings are old stables, and then continues the other side where that house is and actually follows the driveway of that house, crosses over the main road and then joins back with the canal at the end of where the boat moorings are. And so we come to the end of part one of our look at the old loops of the Oxford Canal. The next stretch is an interesting section. There are straight bits that you would think were new but are actually original, and there's bits of canal that are still in use, bits that aren't. So please join me on the next episode, and to make sure you don't miss it, please subscribe to the channel.